Hello and welcome to the Game Mentors.
Hello.
My name is Don.
And I'm Rochelle.
And this is a new show from the Adventure's Edge podcast, all about giving advice about how to run and play role-playing games.
Yes.
So we've been podcasting now for a number of years, and we've mostly been doing actual play podcast, which is a lot of fun. But I've been really thinking more and more, especially the last couple of years, that our group is of a certain age, and we have...
Wow, that's really kind of a depressing way to say it.
Well...
Individuals of a certain age.
Individuals of a certain age.
Mm-hmm.
So I see a lot of streamers, a lot of younger people, the new generation playing the games, and they're out there providing advice to other gamers. But people like us, we grew up in a different time, and we have our own different skill sets. And I feel like there's not a lot of transitional experience, a lot of passing on the torch to these younger people. And I thought that perhaps this would be a great forum for people, with our experience to talk about it and to answer questions, to go out and find questions. I've been looking at various subreddits where people post questions, and also to take questions from your submissions. So that was kind of what I wanted to do. Is let's get together and let's talk about our favorite hobby.
Okay.
So that's what we're here for. We're the Game Mentors. And we're going to just really kind of dive into it. We're going to keep this focused on the game. So we're going to start off. I had so many topics I wanted to do, but I thought that what we're going to do was we're going to just start out with some questions that I've gone out to the internet and found. And you've not read these yet.
I have not. I have no idea what's coming.
You have no idea what's coming. I think these are all pretty softball questions, but they're questions that people genuinely have. And let's see if we can answer them for them.
Okay, let's do it.
So I think all three of these come from the RPG subreddit, which is a fantastic subreddit. And there's a lot of people who post what seem like easy questions, but sometimes they're very difficult too. So we're going to start with, I think, the shallower end of the pool. And also, since this is our beginning episode, some of these questions are about how do you get started?
Okay.
And because we all had to do it back before the internets and all that, but here we are. So let's start with question number 1. I know you look at me like. So this is from the RPG subreddit. And the question is, does the average RPG player have a group of friends that get them into it? I don't know any regular players, but I'm getting into solo play and I'm learning all of this for the first time. And then there's a little bit longer post, but basically they have a lot of experience playing video games. They've been interested in getting into role playing and they don't know anybody. And I'm like, wow, I remember those days.
Do you remember those days? Because it doesn't seem like from the stories that you've told me that you had that experience at all. It seems like you knew people and you guys all kind of like got into it together, and that was your initial experience.
I got people into it.
Oh, okay.
I mean, we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about our storied histories. We might dabble, but I started in 82 and it was middle school and, playing with a few friends at school, but like recruiting, it was going, back then it wasn't mainstream. That was way back. It was like talking to some friends at church and like, hey, I got this cool new game. You want to come try it out? And getting people, luring them over, or being in high school and chatting up the kid next to you. And then, finding somebody else and then it would building from there. Mm. So that was kind of like the early days. There were no other options, but now there's a ton of options.
Yes.
So do you want to start first? Do you want to kind of talk about, before we met, you found some games and you got into the games. You were gaming when we first met. What are your experiences with, how did you get into?
Well, I think that now there's a lot of different ways to find groups of people. There's, a lot of, FLGS or friendly local game stores that have role-playing game nights. So you can just go show up at those and see if you can find a group and jump in that way. You can post, they might have boards where people are looking for players, or you can post that you're a player looking for a game. There's meetups, and you can look for people looking for games, or gamers looking for players, and on there as well. So that's something that we did when we first kind of started looking for people here.
Yeah. So, and this might actually even be where, and the different ages are gravitate towards different platforms. Two groups ago, I met a lot of people through meetup.com because there was a pretty big local active role-playing game meetup. And they had, boards you can post looking for players. And I did the classic, hey, I want to run this game. And then, we met at a mall. And it was like 8 strangers meeting in a mall, the food court, and pulling books out. I'm like, hey, introduce each other. And it's incredibly awkward because many people who play these games are socially awkward to begin with. And you kind of work through that social anxiety and getting past that first hurdle. So meetup.com, check and see if there's anything there. Game stores. Facebook is still very active for role-playing games. Finding, see if there's any local Facebook groups. I know, again, depending on your age, you may or may not want to be on Facebook, but that's a good avenue.
And then other social media, Discord.
Yeah. Find some Discord groups. There are ways to find online games, and this is going to be possibly another generational thing, because I recently saw a survey that showed that, and I don't know how across the board it is, but that half of gamers now play online only. And I feel like that's kind of its own topic. And that made me sad, honestly, because this has always been a very in-person social activity. But if that's the way you have to play, because there is nobody around, there's plenty of options online, various forums, out on Reddit, but also going out to platforms like Roll20. There are looking for games that people post all the time on the forums there, where they have, posting games and looking for players. So I think just some searching, honestly, whichever platform you are already familiar with, you may find some avenues to get games. But I will always, to the very bitter end, advocate try to find somebody in person first.
I think you should just put a pin in that one.
Yeah.
And that can be a whole show.
A whole show. Because there's so much I want to talk about there. But that would be, there's a lot of answers to that. That to me, that seems obvious. But again, I guess if you've never played, you don't know any friends that play, yeah, sure. I can see why you wouldn't really have any idea where to start. So,
or try and lure your friends into playing with you. Start small.
Honestly, I think that's a great idea. And that has to be, in some sense, easier now because it's so much more mainstream. Like it's no longer really stigmatized. Even if you have no interest or you've never played, there's almost no way you don't know what it is anymore. It's just permeated media. You see it on TV shows and movies and portrayed, and in like big shows like Stranger Things. There's so much where people like, what is this? Maybe somehow they managed to get all that way and never hear about it. So people know about it at least a little bit. So yeah, that's literally how we started. Like, hey, I want to play this game. You go buy a book and hit up your coworkers, or like, hey, come on over. I've got some snacks. Let's try this out. And you may hate it, but yeah, why not?
Mm-hmm.
And you might convert people, and then you have a lifelong hobby to share with you and your friends.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
In the retirement village.
The retirement village. Yeah, I can't wait.
Wow. Okay.
Well, I think, if you have further questions about that, feel free to reach out to us.
Or other suggestions.
Yeah.
Like if there's a brilliant idea and that you're like, hey, this is what I did, and this is what worked for me, this is how I lured the people in.
All right. So building on that question, this one is also from the RPG subreddit. And the question is, what is your best advice for a beginner in RPGs? Now, they did elaborate here, and it sounds like they're just getting started. They introduced themselves. They've made a character, and they're getting ready to go to, they said a festival where there's going to be game tables, and they're feeling nervous about it. Like, so it sounds like they haven't really played much, but they've got a character and they're excited. Best advice. Like, here you are. Ooh, what do you say to that?
Okay, well, they're already a step ahead of where I would have given them the first advice, which is
but yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, don't try and play a magic user.
Oh, that's so funny, is because literally, the question is, they made a magician.
Oh,
yeah.
No, don't do that for your first character. Like, don't make your life more complicated than it needs to be when you're trying to learn. Like, don't do that to yourself. Yeah, but all right, too late. So that would have been my first piece of advice.
Pick something simple.
Pick something simple as you're trying to learn all of the complex rules. I think that a lot of people get super excited. Like, oh, magic, that's, so exciting and fun and cool and yay. But if you're trying to learn this whole new complex system and, you're stepping into this thing that you don't know, it's one thing to have read everything, but it's another thing to play.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And there's the advice here. It definitely is layered. Because this already is making some assumptions, and in this post, they don't specifically say they're out to play 5th edition. And when I read these and they don't talk about a specific system, I just assume that that's what they're talking about, because I mean that is the most prevalent system, but that's not the only system.
Sure.
And we can get into systems, but I mean, if you're brand new and you're trying to find a group, I mean, that's probably what you're going to find.
Probably.
Unless you go, looking, and I'm not a personal advocate for it, but that's not really the point. It's, I don't know, showing up like with a character at a table for a pop-up game is probably okay. But if you are, joining a new group, like those are two very different experiences, right?
Right.
Usually in my experience, like you've found a group, you've been invited to one, or you're creating one, you've met some people online, there's a conversation, and then you make a character that's going to fit in. But yeah, with these Adventure League groups where it's like, okay, they just take anybody. The very baseline is, I mean, you definitely don't have to show up as an expert. I think if you've actually gone out and bought the player's handbook, which is already more than what a lot of players even do. Yeah, I mean, read it. That's a great start. Reading the rules. I mean, it's crunchy. There's a lot to learn, but definitely don't think you have to show up and know everything. Not even remotely. That's not realistic. I mean, maybe some people are like, oh yeah, I've got this, and they learn it all. But don't be intimidated by knowing all the rules. That's what the game master is there for.
Yeah, and so, all right. They've already ignored my first piece of advice, but that's okay. So the next thing I would say is it's okay to not know everything, and it's okay to ask for help and guidance. You will run into people that are jerks and gatekeepers, but by and large, people that are playing are going to want to have people that are interested and excited about playing, and they're going to be helpful and want to help you have a good time and succeed. So it's okay to say, oh, I'm not sure how to do this, or what am I supposed to roll here, or what does that look like? So ask for help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that the mechanics of play, honestly, is the smallest hurdle. I am fine with somebody showing up and not knowing the mechanics. That's okay. Well, if you've showed up and you've got a book and a character and dice, you're already ahead of the curve, and I think that's awesome. I honestly think that I think my best piece of advice, if you're truly your only experience in role playing in general is coming from video games, um, is that the biggest difference is that at a table, your character is not the center of the show. In a video game, you're the hero. Everything's about you. At a role playing table, it's a collaborative story, and you are one of a team. And everybody can get their little time in the sun, but show up and be prepared to make it not about yourself. It's about the team and the team success. Because honestly, I think that's there are many frustrations, but that can be one thing that can ruin a game is if you've got one person who wants everything to be about them and they try to steal the spotlight and they try to step on other people and make it all about themselves, especially if they're trying to compensate from inexperience. Don't do that. Like to be a team player.
That is very good advice. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's just one of my personal frustrations, and honestly, I see that especially in like RPG horror stories is where that's another subreddit where you have one player that can wreck a game just by their behaviors. And yeah, and especially if people are immature and they maybe have some social issues and they're just not used to working with other people. Yeah, it's a team experience, and not one person wins. It's everybody wins together. So that's my best advice. Come in, be willing to learn, be willing to listen, follow the social cues. And this is one of those what other, there's probably a ton of advice, right? Like there's tons of things you could talk about.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, just be open-minded. And yeah, be willing to kind of work through that anxiety of meeting new people. And then the other thing I would say is don't let your first experience define your opinion of the hobby.
Yes.
Because, and when you have a hobby that is completely a creation of the people who are collaborating at that table, every table can be so different. Every game master can be so different. And
I was about to say, and this is exactly along, I think what you're saying was, temper your expectations.
Oh yeah. Well, and they didn't mention watching streamers, but also
that's exactly what I was getting
at.
Yeah,
if you're coming into this where your only exposure is watching Critical Role or some other big name streamers, and I've watched them for hundreds of hours and I want to come be part of that. It's not the same. It is just, it's really not. Yes, they are playing a game, but what you're watching is a performative version of the game.
Right.
And for most people, that's not what happens at the table. There is some performance to it, but it's a lot more arguing in math.
All right, there's not that much math anymore.
Yeah.
There's a lot less math.
Your game master is unlikely to be a Matt Mercer. I mean, and that's been one of those things too. I would love to talk about the Mercer effect, where people have this expectation, and then other people are afraid to be game masters because they know that I'm not going to be that good. And I think that's okay. Is that you don't have to be these amazing game masters, but I think that's another question. So, temper your expectations. I like that. Don't let your first experience, because you might go and have a terrible first experience. And unfortunately, that's just the case, because it just could be, I don't know, you might stumble into a clique of people who really aren't welcoming, or you might stumble into a situation where the game master is kind of a control freak and really just has a power trip. It's like...
Well, it reminds me, and I won't I won't mention any specifics, but, a few years ago, you and I went and did one of those kind of one-shots at a convention.
Oh, yeah, we did.
And we were like, after the fact, we were like, well, that sucked.
It did. Right. It was a Pathfinder Society.
Yeah.
And That was our first experience with it. But we'd played Pathfinder for years, and I was kind of excited, but also like, you don't really know what to expect. And I've heard some people have great experiences with that.
Yeah.
But it was an inexperienced person, and they're short, they're linear adventures. They have to be to get them into a 2-hour or 4-hour block.
Yeah.
But it was like, we were just like railroaded to the
Yeah.
very. It didn't even really seem to matter what we did.
No, it did not.
Yeah.
And I was like,
They were just like reading the script, and you're just there to sort of roll dice. And even then, that felt like in the end, it didn't really matter.
yeah. And I was just, if that had been my first time,
Oh gosh.
if that had been my first experience with role playing, I think I would have been like, okay, well, thanks for showing me that,
Yeah.
and I'm not interested in this little experience again.
That was stupid.
Mm-mm.
So yeah,
Just be aware.
it may take you some time to find your people, and be prepared for that. Yeah. Okay. I feel like honestly we could keep talking on that, but let's move on. I don't have a ton of questions for our first show. But the third question is that was kind of building here.
Okay.
So you've found a group now. You've learned how to play. But this is one, and this kind of goes back to the performative. And then the question is, do you consider second person role playing to be role playing? Does anyone else do this? And I'll read a little bit more of this. And they said by
Okay.
second person role playing, I mean the act of not really speaking in character, basically just describing what your character tries to say, rolling your checks, and then deciding, with the GM and the group what actually comes. Stressing the fact that you're still role playing your character, but you never speak as them. And the reason I ask is I hate speaking in character. While it's fun sometimes, most times it really doesn't reflect how your character is actually talking, probably because I'm a terrible improviser and actor. I can get into the mindset of the character, but actually speaking as them is really hard. I'm not looking for validation here. I'm mainly asking if that's something other people do, and if people still consider it to be role playing.
Okay, wow. So I find this a very interesting question.
Good. I was hoping you would. I have a lot of opinions on this, but I want to hear yours first.
Well, so it's going to take me a while to actually form an opinion on this because, like you said, these are my first time hearing a question. Yeah. Is it role? So I don't have a problem if that's how somebody wants to play. That is not how I would ever want to play. I really enjoy being my character.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy speaking as my character. I enjoy like embodying my character and talking in my silly voices. And yes, like that is super fun for me. So would I feel like I was role playing if I didn't do that? I don't think I would. So with that said, but what's the phrase all the kids are saying these days? I'm not going to yuck on somebody else's yum. So if that's how somebody else is feeling and is comfortable playing, that's okay. Would it maybe take me out of the immersion a little bit? Probably. Is that maybe somebody that I would not necessarily want to play with? I don't know. I mean,
Okay.
I don't know. But then, so that also makes me think about interpretation, like in terms of like environmental or natural or historical interpretation methods.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's first person and second, first person interpretation, and then, just interpretation of like just talking about and describing it. And they're both forms of interpretation. So why can't those both be forms of role playing?
Okay. All right. So 100% you're role playing. I'm not even going to equivocate on that. Because to me, the actual role playing is not the speaking in character. It's the acting in character. It's trying to do what you think your character would do. And you see this even in like computer role-playing games. Like when I'm playing a pretty immersive CRPG, you're making choices based upon like what you perceive to be yourself as the character.
Right.
And that is a form of role-playing. So I think the short answer here is 100%. If all you want to ever do is second person, you are role-playing. As long as you're trying to be consistent in the way you behave, you're trying to think about how your character would act in situations. Yeah, you're role-playing. Absolutely.
Okay.
Now, I do think that you are missing out on some stuff by not trying to get taking that step further and trying to talk in character. Now, I recognize there are some social barriers there.
Sure.
Especially if you like you're not comfortable with the people you're with. If you have these preconceived notions of what people are expecting you to do. And one reason I liked this question is it kind of, now thinking about it, this goes back to if people who are new to the hobby, and again, they've only seen streamers.
Oh, right.
And you think people are going to expect you to show up and be a voice actor and do accents and be an entertainer. And that's just not what it's about. I've been playing this game for over 40 years. And if you do listen to our podcast, I have like 3 voices. It is what it is. I'm not a performance game master. It's just not. I mean, I love it. I will do my best. I will first person every last character I can. But yeah, they will all start kind of sounding like, oh yeah, I know that person, you know? And I know that. That's just me, and it's not even a style. It's just it's just not a talent.
That's your limitations.
That 100%. That and I recognize that, and I'm okay with that. I'm not even really insecure about it anymore. It's like, well, you know, that's just who I am. I'll never be one of these YouTube stars who can really engage and perform that way. I can't even do accents. I mean, I suppose if I took some classes, but obviously I'm never bothered, and I probably never will. So I think that, yeah, if you're coming in and you have a lot of social anxiety and you've never had any experience with this, you know, there's some things you could probably do on your own. Or, you know, you could maybe take you could take a speech class or acting class or whatever, but it's okay. Come in and be yourself. Even if you talk in your own voice.
Yeah, as your character. You don't have to use a voice.
Yeah, you don't have to use a voice. Most people at our tables don't. I mean, it's fun when you do, but don't worry about it. You're here to have fun. But either way, if it takes you a while to even build up to that, second person role playing is role playing. Yeah.
All right. Nice.
You can take that to the bank.
Okay.
Okay. I only have one more question, and I was thinking, I didn't know what our target time was. I was thinking a 45-minute show. We'll see. This is probably going to, this is our first episode.
Sure, yeah.
We're not here to do hours and hours of content. But this one actually bleeds over to the Game Master side, but it's still kind of like it feels still like you're new.
Okay.
Because the theme here was you're new to it and you're learning some of the basics. And I really like this question. And I don't do this enough.
Oh.
I know. How do you get critique from your players? And here it is. I said, hello, I've been GMing for a while, and and for years with my group of players, I try to ask them what I can do to run the game better. I never get any feedback. I really like playing. I try hard to have a fun game and a good game. I kind of feel like when I ask my players, they just say they're having fun, but I want more feedback because sometimes I feel like I didn't run a good game, and for whatever reason, it gives me anxiety. Yeah. So I think in this case, this person said they've been doing this for a few years, but I think that this really applies to somebody who's just started too. Like maybe it's your first session, maybe it's your third session, and you're worried. I mean, you have to worry, like you coming into it, like, did I do a good job?
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think that's why this is really kind of ties to getting started is, again, you just heard the question. I already have some ideas on this, but I like to hear your feedback, what we're kind of doing this.
Well, I mean, I think it's tough. I think it's tough to get honest feedback. One, I think that a lot of times players are just appreciative that somebody's willing to put in the work
Yeah.
to run the game, because it's work. It's a lot of time and effort that somebody puts in to run a good game.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of prep, there's a lot of thought, and I think generally players are like just appreciative. And if you're like constantly nitpicking or saying, well, then maybe you're afraid that they're going to be like, well, okay, I don't need this headache.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm done. So, maybe that's part of why people don't want to give, any negatives, because they are happy and they are having fun. And that doesn't mean that you're perfect. It just means, yeah, we're enjoying ourselves. And so maybe just accept that you are doing okay, but that doesn't mean that you don't want to do better. And I think that's great. I think that recognizing that there's always room for improvement is a good thing. If you can ask a more specific question, then you're more likely to get more specific responses. So instead of just saying, what can I do better? That's so large and open-ended. People might struggle to give you good feedback.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can if there's something in particular that you can focus on, maybe after each session, asking very specifically, hey, how did you feel about the fights? Did you feel like they were challenging enough? Did you think that did you feel like you had enough options and control over choices during the game? Did you feel like, what else would you be concerned about?
That everybody got their time.
Oh, all right.
Yeah. Because I mean, as a game master, that's one of my concerns is that everybody feels like they got to do something and got to share some time at the table and not be excluded.
Sure. So if you can ask those more specific questions that maybe you're concerned about, maybe they will give you feedback rather than that very open-ended, hey, what can I do better? Because that's just big and large and intimidating.
Mm-hmm. So I did a little digging on this.
Oh,
I did. Because this is actually, as a game master, I love positive feedback. Like that, getting some validation, and it doesn't really come a lot, but when it does, anytime somebody's like, hey, that was a great game or I enjoyed that, that is really validating. But I really don't know that I have ever made a consistent asking people. It's just not something that I now I feel like I really need to. Like, wow, I wonder if I should start doing that. I don't know. It was maybe just not something that's.
Are you going to start handing out like an end of session survey?
That'd be funny. But it turns out this is a thing, and I mean, people not have really thought about that. They've created little mechanisms for that, and I did some internet digging, and this actually kind of goes back to like it looks like even like scouting. So in scouting, it was like they have what they call feather, sticks, and rocks.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Which is a thing. You ask people like what put a feather in your cap, or what was an obstacle, or what was a pain. And then there's like another evolution of this, which is the rosebud and thorn.
Yep.
And then
these are literally things that it's the debrief.
Exactly.
Yeah, that we do. Yeah.
So then somebody, not some specifically, this was a number of years ago, put out by the Gauntlet, which is on brindlewoodbay.com, and they created just a variant. They specifically cite roses and thorns as the starting point, but they call it stars and wishes, and they leave out the negative, which I don't know about that, But the idea with Stars and Wishes is that at the end of your session, like basically you're like, well, the stars is like, what did you particularly like? And then the wishes is like, what do you want in the future? And this is a long article.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really paraphrasing.
So just as a point of information, like all of these are literally experiential education tools.
That is not surprising. And I know that you have a lot of background in this.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, I'm really glad like you just knew what these were. I did not. Like I had honestly, up until I read this, I have never heard of the rosebud and thorn. And that apparently this is like prevalent. This is not new.
No, it's not. This is not new at all. And like these are these are literally tools that I teach in several of my classes.
And I thought that perhaps that might excite you that people are trying to use these in role playing. And I think that's fantastic. And I want to learn more about it. So, but the gist of that here, just to kind of elaborate slightly. So the rose is, and I guess you have to ask everybody like what the roses are. Like, what's the positive aspect? You start with the rose, ask participants to share what they consider the positive aspects of the topic. What went well, what was accomplished, anything they appreciate about it. And here it's like, write these on a whiteboard or sticky note as well. I mean, you're kind of polling your friends. But yeah, this is like a specific thing. And I don't think it has to be a ton of things, even if it's just one thing. And then the bud is the opportunities for growth. Encourage participants to share ideas about opportunities for growth or improvement. These could be areas where they see potential for positive change. And then the thorn is invite participants to share the challenges, issues, or negative aspects they've encountered. And I see, looking at the stars of wishes, why they're wanting to avoid the negative. And I feel like maybe I need to spend some more time really thinking about it. But I feel like it's okay to talk about the negative. And I think some people are just afraid to. You've got the conflict avoidance, anxiety. But honestly, you gotta embrace the negative to grow.
So something that I've used in classes as a formative evaluation is just, if you don't want to use the kind of metaphor or the poetic aspect, is just stop, start, continue. So what's something what's something that we've been doing that you think we should stop doing? What's something that we haven't been doing that you think we should start doing? And what's something that we have been doing that's been working that we should continue doing?
Okay, I'm going to write that down. Now I'm like, we won't do this on the show, but I wonder if we could take that exact thing or the flowering metaphor and reskin it. I don't know if we could come up with more D&D terms. I don't know. I don't know what those are, and maybe there's just. I thought I would just bring that up, and maybe we could.
The sword, the shield, and the bow.
Yeah, I mean that's the gist of it.
I'll work on that.
Okay,
let's workshop that.
We'll do that. So basically, though, that would be so. Yeah, so basically, instead of not just what you guys think about the session, exactly what you're saying, be specific.
Mm-hmm.
And I will also say, don't spend a ton of time on this every. So you don't want to.
No, don't make it seem like a job.
And I would say maybe don't even do it every session.
No,
maybe every. I don't know, maybe every 3 or 4 sessions.
Or I mean, if you wanted to, you could just like slip it in at the end, like, "Hey, what'd you think of that goblin fight?
Yeah,
did they seem OP?"
Or even
I don't know
if you're. I don't know if your group has a group chat or something that everybody has an online forum after the game. And like we do a Facebook chat to kind of coordinate things, but maybe it would be easier to not even do it in person. If you have people that are uncomfortable saying stuff, they might feel a little more open to, what you guys like about it, what you dislike about it. And that way they could just type a sentence and then there's less burden, perhaps. I know.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay. So those were the 4 questions I had.
Okay.
So I don't know. What do you think? What would you say the rose about this was?
Oh my gosh. Oh, so you're saying, what do I think about asking these questions?
Yeah.
I mean, I thought they were interesting questions. I'm kind of curious to what some of the other responses were for.
Yeah.
So I would like maybe throw that in. Like, I want some follow up.
Oh, to see what other people.
Mm-hmm. Or if the original posters responded.
I wasn't sure about releasing posters like their Reddit handles.
No, I'm not asking to say. I'm not asking.
I mean,
you to
maybe
tell me
that's
who
okay though.
I'm not asking. I'm not even asking you to tell me who said what. I'm just saying, like, oh yeah, they responded and said they followed up and said, oh, I went to it and it was great, or I went to it and it sucked, or I never want to play this game again, or I don't, just like.
Well, I did save the links to all of these questions, so maybe for the next round, I will capture some of the top responses that we can read some top responses after we kind of respond ourselves. How about that?
Yeah,
Okay.
There, that's what I'm asking for.
Okay.
That's my start.
Okay.
My stop. I think it's too new to have a stop.
Fair enough.
Continue. I think 4 questions is probably a good amount for me. So let's continue along that vein. Other than that, that's I don't know. It's probably all I can handle.
That's fair. So the format of the show going forward, I think I don't know if it's going to be strictly an alternate. I know that you've expressed the willingness to answer these types of questions.
Mm-hmm.
So that's definitely going to be a format for at least half of these shows. And then the other half is I want to see if I can coerce. We have a lot of game masters in our group. I was actually kind of adding this up, thinking about us being the older set that we have, well over 200 years of game mastering experience just at our table. Like that's a lot of experience. We've all been playing this for a long time, and I wanted to see if I could do some one-on-ones and maybe get into really, I don't want to talk about how to build your next, min-max fighter, monk or whatever. There's enough of that. I really want to tackle topics that can help people grow as game masters or even players and just really enjoy the hobby. Because I don't know. I see things changing, and I see people. I'm in groups of game masters and these older game masters, and there's a lot of this get off my lawn attitude where like best edition was first edition and the edition wars, and like I don't want to get into that.
No, play what you want. Play what makes you happy.
Exactly. I want to keep this positive and interesting, and hopefully be able to share some stuff that'll actually be useful to people and keep the hobby going. So that's what we're here for. Hopefully this was useful and interesting, and we plan on keeping this coming. If you haven't already listened to our actual play show, we have the Adventure's Edge RPG, which we've completed season 1. We got 27 eps out of that. Season 2 is going to be probably, we'll see, hopefully coming out in March.
Soon. Yeah, we hope.
And we got some new cast members. We're very excited. And in the meantime, we're going to continue to try to put out some more of these shows and also some more of our Tell Us Mores, where we talk about the world of Tell Us, which is our game world. So thanks for joining. We will hopefully talk to all of you or share more information soon.
Yeah.
All right.
Have a good one.
Thanks, everybody.